Okay, AP Euro, West Coast. Let's take a look at the art movements of this time period that we're looking at here, which is after the Renaissance, sort of during the Reformation even. And we're going to look at two types of art, actually three types of art in these few minutes here, which are in this unit. And we just don't have time to cover it in class, so I'm going to go over it with you guys right now. First type is Mannerism, and it gets its name literally from the word manner, as in the manner of other artists, or the way that they paint. That's one idea. There's actually a lot of artistic debate about this, but the simple idea here is that artists in the late 1500s and what we call the High Renaissance and later thought, how can I outdo Michelangelo? He's already done everything so perfectly, and so have others such as Da Vinci. And why don't we try something different and exaggerate things and try to just make it a little funkier than what these guys have done? So they went ahead and did that with great stuff like this. One famous artist is El Greco. He happened to be a Greek man who lived in Spain, and so what do Spanish people do? They just call him El Greco because he's the only Greek guy there. And so what he would do here with this a bit of Mannerist art is use a lot of color and kind of interesting sizing of the people to really have it stand out and paint differently than a typical Renaissance artist of the early 1500s. You can see the texture in the clothing as well come out in this picture, which is religious, the Assumption of the Virgin. And then over here, come on, Parmigianino, Madonna with the long neck. Notice her long neck. Notice the baby right here, little baby Jesus. He's pretty funky looking, really stretched out. Not sure if he's really something you want to be excited to see in the hospital as your child. And she's got a bit of a neck there, so giving a giraffe a run for its money. Definitely standing out, something that's dramatic and different, and very famous Mannerist piece of art. And then, of course, El Greco Lacon, which is a piece of work. This is in your textbook, actually. You can see the city of Toledo, where he lived in Spain, in the background. Doesn't look very inspiring and uplifting in a really positive way, as in I want to go to Toledo and have a nice sunny picnic, as I'm not seeing that here in this painting. But it's based on this actually ancient Roman art that was created in the years before Christ, and it's based on a mythological story about a fellow who has some dealings with Poseidon, god of the sea, and I won't go into those. There's a lot of them that are pretty controversial, but basically he gets it with some snakes here with his son. And he doesn't look too happy, his sons, I should say. And so this was actually unearthed in Rome in the early 1500s. Michelangelo was actually brought to the site. And this is part of the Renaissance. They looked at this, and people studied it, and they thought, wow, this is awesome. This is what the Romans did. And this is something that inspired Michelangelo at that time. And so El Greco took that, and he used it for his inspiration for this painting. Again, the long, stretched-out bodies. Very Mannerist in style. And we're going to move on now to our next style of art of the time period, which really follows in the footsteps of Mannerism, which is Baroque art. From Barocco, pearl in Portuguese, or Barocco, pearl. Anyway, Baroque art is very famous for being Catholic art. It is art that is very dramatic and vivid. It's really supposed to appeal to the senses. We have to remember that the Catholic Church and the Council of Trent of the Catholic Reformation made a lot of policy decisions, and one of those decisions it made was that there should be an approach to art, and art should be in many ways directed toward promoting the values and ideals of the church. And so this idea of Baroque art really came to embody many Catholic themes during this time. It wasn't always Catholic, but it usually is considered more Catholic art than other types of art. It seems to have started in Italy and then spread to other Catholic countries at the time. There's also a lot of talk about Baroque music, which we'll get into later, which is really based in Germany. But right now we're just looking at the visual arts of Baroque art. So very vivid, very dramatic, often used by the church, but also used by wealthy nobility. Classic example of that is Peter Paul Rubens. I'm going to skip ahead here. Where did he go? Sorry, guys. Here we go. The landing of Marie de Medici at Marseille. If you guys remember, Marie de Medici is the mother of some of those kings of France in the 1500s. And she came from Italy. Supposedly, the Italians said, stole all that Italian food, all those recipes that then became the basis for great French culinary arts. And here she is landing in Marseille in southern France as she arrives to be married off into the French royal family. And she's got some nice fleshy bodies down here welcoming her in the water. Very Baroque in style, and of course very vivid red colors. Rubens is paid by her, so this is a great example of art of the time period being commissioned by wealthy families to promote their greatness as well. And so wealthy families would use Baroque art to impress their visitors, and Marie de Medici was very famous for hiring Peter Paul Rubens for many paintings. I'm going to go back here. There's another one of his paintings which is very religious, but also you can notice the vivid colors. Again, a little fleshy baby. I think he looks pretty realistic, very Renaissance babyish, not very much of a little man baby of the Middle Ages, kind of cute. And you got a little camel up here, taking a look, looks like he's kind of smiling. So that guy's got a mustache. So we got some nice vivid colors, nice contours to the bodies, very much Baroque art as well of Peter Paul Rubens. Caravaggio, an Italian artist, The Crowning with Thorns, another religious painting, again, promoting values of the Catholic Church with this. And then, of course, Caravaggio actually is famous for liking to have a lot of heads chopped off, I like to think. This is another biblical story, Judith beheading Holofernes, whom she seduced to bed and then chopped his head off. As you can see here, rather grisly painting that depicts that. So, oh, yes, and if you'd like to give fire to man, you shall find yourself tied up and daily have a hawk or an eagle rip out your liver and kill you until you're only to be born again the next day and have the same thing happen for eternity. And this is Rubens' telling of that story, Prometheus Bound. Very vivid, stark, fleshy body and his liver coming out quite nicely right there. Okay, and then another famous Baroque piece of art is Gian Lorenzo Bernini's Ecstasy of St. Teresa. She is right here. She supposedly was sleeping and an angel came to her and pierced her dozens of times with a sword, with an arrow, and she felt quite ecstatic about it. And so, the look on her face seems to be that she's in a pretty pleasurable situation here, and this is a very spiritually motivated pleasure, although other people might question that. And this, of course, is an example of Baroque art. This is in Italy in the Vatican, so it's called the Ecstasy of St. Teresa. And, of course, the Throne of St. Peter, very great detail as well in this by Bernini in the Vatican. And, of course, he also designed the Plaza, or St. Peter's Piazza there in the Vatican. And then finally, the last type of art is Dutch Realism. It's very realistic, hence the title. It's from the golden age of the Dutch Republic in the 1600s when they were flying high, doing well with their commercial capitalism. And, of course, the great artist of that time is Rembrandt van Rijn. And this is an example of that. The art tends to be very secular, as you see in this painting. These guys are Calvinists in the way they dress, but they're sampling officials, or they sample the quality of the cloth that comes through the cloth exchange there. And he's painting them. He's been paid to paint them. Another example of Dutch realism would be this Vermeer painting, The Milkmaid, because a lot of the art is also very normal, depicting ordinary quality daily life activities, such as pouring some milk. And then, of course, I'm going to skip that and come to Judith Leister's self-portrait, because there are many portraits in the time of Dutch realism as well. Now, Rembrandt did draw religious art later in his career, although this really wouldn't be a great example of your typical Dutch realism of that time, but it is a Rembrandt painting. And that's that. All right. Hope this helps. See you later.